The idea of the church rooted in the life of Jesus himself as the truth of which both the Jewish temple and the pagan temples were, in the last analysis, pointers or parodies. But if heaven and earth are joined together in Jesus, in his resurrection, the other thing to remember about heaven, which mostly when people think about the ascension they forget, is that in biblical theology, heaven is the control room for earth. Heaven is not a detached place where somebody goes in order precisely not to have anything to do with earth. If you read the book of Daniel, and Daniel is very significant for the whole theology of the ascension, as we'll see in a moment, the point again and again is, there is a God in heaven, therefore you, Nebuchadnezzar or Darius or whoever you are, better watch out, because he's actually in charge, and you'll be finding that pretty soon. Heaven is the control room for earth. Today we are faced in our late modern, postmodern world with the false antithesis, let me say this in technical jargon and then unpack it, with the false antithesis of deism or theocracy. The deism of the Enlightenment, the Epicureanism, which says basically God's upstairs, he's a long way away, religion is about how we in private get in touch with this distant God, but it's got nothing whatever to do with the real world. Your country, in a measure, is built on that dogma. Very explicitly. Late 18th century deism, Epicureanism. Or, today, we see types of theocracy. We see in Islamic fundamentalism a sense that if God is God, we're just going to smash you. We're going to defeat you. We're going to blast you into smithereens. And our world says, no, no, no. If that's what having a God who's running the show here looks like, we don't want that. We'll go back to deism, thank you very much. Right now in my country, even though we have an established church, actually our worldview is pretty similar to yours in terms of deism. In my country and in yours, we have people saying God must at all costs be kept out of public life. Got to be kept away from the public square. Because that way lies danger. The danger of a tyrannous theocracy. But the point of the ascension and all that flows from it in the book of Acts is to say that the word theocracy changes according to which theos you believe in. If you believe in a big, bad, bullying God who's out to get you and smash you and squash you to fit his preconceived notions, as it were, then of course theocracy will be unpleasant. But supposing you believe in the God revealed in Jesus of Nazareth, theocracy might look very different. The kingdom of God is theocracy. And the whole point of Jesus' mission and ministry and all those parables and all those feastings and healings and work with the poor and so on was to say, this is what it looks like when God is running the show. It's not that nasty, hateful theocracy which would come and bully you and make you cringe and diminish you. It's a theocracy where the genuine, generous God comes to fill his creation with new love and life and hope. That's what the book of Acts is all about. I sometimes say, to jolt people into thinking about the kingdom of God, I sometimes do this with youth groups. They come in and, the bishop's going to speak to you. And I come and say, what would it look like if God was running this show? So people say, well, we'd have better coffee for a start. Fine, okay. So actually, that's what Jesus was talking about. Jesus was going around saying, what would it look like if God was in charge here? Say, I'll show you. Here's a leper, gets healed. Here's somebody who's been out in the wilderness, gets brought, all that stuff. And then he explains, this is what it looks like when God's running the show. Acts is saying, you will be my witnesses. You will go and show people as well as tell them what it's like when God, the true God, is running the show. The ascension, in other words, is the correlate of the worldwide mission of the church, or more exactly, worldwide mission is what follows from the ascension. Because once Jesus is raised to heaven, he is in charge and sends people to implement his work and his will. And that's why, verse 11, the second coming is the moment when heaven and earth finally come together. And again, if you've read Surprised by Hope, you'll have heard me talk about this at some length. So much of the Western tradition has got the second coming wrong. He's coming back to take us home. No, he isn't. He's coming back to establish his rule and his reign by transforming this world and our bodies to be like his glorious body. Philippians 3:20 and 21, and by a curious convenience, Acts 3:20 and 21 as well. Times of refreshing may come from the presence of the Lord, and he will send you the Messiah, appointed for you, that is Jesus, who must remain in heaven until the time of universal restoration that God announced long ago through his holy prophets. The point of the second coming is not to take people away from the earth, but to establish God's kingdom on the earth, to bring the last scene in the Bible, Revelation 21. Is not about people going up to heaven. It's about the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven to earth. It's the ultimate denial of all Gnosticism. And since post-Enlightenment Western civilization has been deeply Gnostic in so many ways, the church has gone along for the ride and has robbed itself not only of one of its key theological emphases, but, as we shall see, one of its key cultural and political emphases as well. What would somebody in the ancient world have thought reading Acts 1:1 to 11? An ancient Jew of the first century would have known Daniel 7. Josephus tells us that in the middle of the century, one of the things that drove them to revolt against Rome was a text in their scriptures which said that at that time a world ruler would emerge from Judea. And if you've read the New Testament of the people of God, pages whatever it is, 300 and something, you will know that the key text in the book of Daniel is a combination of Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, which give you, and Daniel 9, which give you a time frame, which give you a world ruler, which give you a Jewish king who becomes sovereign over the world. And how does that happen? One, like a son of man, comes upward. The coming of the Son of Man is going up, not down. I once said that in a lecture in Regent College, Vancouver, and a young Baptist came up to me afterwards and said, listen, in my Bible it says he's coming. You just said he's going, and I think he's coming. I said, I'm sorry, the Greek is a komenon, which could mean coming or going. And he said, well, now I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I said, fine, okay, I understand that. In Daniel, the movement is upwards. It's the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days, coming, being exalted to heaven. When a Jew would read Acts 1:1 to 11, a Jew aware of Daniel would say, this is the moment when God's sovereignty is being exercised through his anointed king, when the nations are going to find out who runs this world after all.